4020.
No cake in the press room.
No.
We didn't get any free pens either, like the people in the Royal Box get. But we did get a free programme, so that was £10.
Was it?
That's what it says now. Look,
Sure, it's worth it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, but still £10 for a programme. Probably a bit less on eBay.
Probably won't be.
Keep your eyes out for that. The women's final.
Yes.
I think last week on this programme, we, as many people probably said, Wigan will probably win unless they fail to fire under the arch expectation, lack of experience, blah, blah, blah. Lo and behold, Wigan win. I didn't think they'd win by as many as they did, but they did. And they were quite good.
They were utterly dominant in all aspects of the game. And to start talking
42-6.
Saints were uncharacteristically lax with the ball and defending up the middle would be to detract from the way that Wigan played, the speed that they played at, the skill that they showed. They had some outstanding players. Mary Coleman was brilliant.
See, we don't get to vote on the women's player of the match, which doesn't have a name, as we keep saying. It needs to be named after someone, but we don't. I don't know why. I don't know why that works. I don't know. I don't know.
No, I thought Eva Hunter was fantastic, as she has been all this season. Molly Jones is in a rich vein of form, and the try that was constructed between Jones and Coleman was a perfect example of how well they played. And then you look at Grace Banks and Izzy Rowe. Anna Davis didn't have a lot to do, but is just such a consummate finisher in every position. A Wigan player outplayed a Saints play.
I want an Izzy Rowe scrum hat. They should be signing them in the Wigan Club shop. I'm sure
It
that
might
lots
say
of
that in the magazine.
it might say that. All the who said that? Me.
Whoever may have written the report on the women's.
All the girls in Wigan will want to have Izzy Rowe hats, and I think they should make that kit their primary kit. I know that goes against the kind of thing that we're going to cherry and white, but I think this is
their
now
identity.
This is now. I don't say iconic, but this is they won the Challenge Cup for the first time at Wembley, which Wigan synonymous, and in this kit.
Yeah,
this
is their kit.
This is their identity. You're right.
And I do think as well that the fact that she wore a multicoloured scrum cap that matched the kit, that's marketable, and they were brilliant. And I think, did we see a changing of the guard in the women's game? It's possibly too early to say, but on the fact that my only concern for Wigan before the game was, would they freeze, because they'd never played it before, and the fact that they didn't, and not only didn't but grew into the occasion to the extent where they were utterly dominant. You've no reason to think now that they should be ranked number one in the women's game.
Top of the table. Can't write off the Saints, though. Can't write off the Saints.
No, and they'll want to hit back. But again, without being disparaging in any way to St Helens and what they've achieved, which, has been a dynasty. By comparison, in the way the two teams played, one looked slightly ageing coming to the end. The other looked youthful right at the beginning. And, some of the best players to ever play the game have pulled on that Saints shirt. But there's going to be an interesting transition, which the men's side have also gone through, because some of the stalwart names that we've come to associate with them are nearer the end of their career, and the main group of those Wigan players are just starting out on their journey.
I'm going to play devil's advocate in a minute, but we weren't disrespectful to St Helens in the build-up, weren't we? Because they claimed to be disrespectfful.
And again, if you win, you can say, we thought we were disrespected. Yeah. If you lose in the manner that you lose, it doesn't matter whether you think you were disrespected or not. You've just lost. You've just played into the hands of the people you think disrespected you. Nobody did. I think they wanted more kudos beforehand that they were the defending holders of it. But nobody's ever disrespected St Helens in the women's game. Wigan were better.
They weren't written off. The players who are or aren't legends before were going to be legends regardless of what the result was of one game.
Absolutely.
Because they won 4 Challenge Cups in a row.
Yeah.
So, now, here's things that people say about Wigan, Right, so here we go. This is what people say. This is not me. It's what people say. They've bought the trophy by bringing in some players from Australia and such.
That's clever recruitment.
They're not all young. They've got some older players in there as well, but they don't get mentioned.
The mix is great. The older players that particularly come off the bench to steady the ship. It's what you've got to look at, I think, is where they were when Denis Betts, which was a fantastic appointment, and in some respects in the women's game a little bit of a revolutionary appointment. When he arrived, they were missing direction. They were bringing through some talent, but it wasn't channeled, didn't sort of go anywhere. The club weren't as supportive as they certainly are now in their own training space, in Oral, their own kit. I think what he's done is turned potential into now fulfilment. And they brought some players in positions that they felt they needed, but York have done that. Saints have done that. Leeds have done that. He happened to go to Australia to get 3 or 4 of his. No, the balance is great. But it's the rugby they play. They didn't score 42 points because Saints didn't turn up. They scored 42 points because they were really good with the ball.
And they are really good.
And they're very, very fit.
And had Zero had her kicking boots on the week before at Leeds, they would have scored a lot more points against Leeds and beaten Leeds by a lot more than they did. But she certainly had her kicking boots on at Wembley, nailing that one from the touchline.
Sensation.
I don't think we can get as overexcited as we are about the talent coming through at Wigan, because it is exciting and they have been given a chance. And last year they were able to grow into their roles.
Yeah.
I think we said this last
understand
year.
what Denis Betts wanted.
And they play nice rugby.
I think the other thing is it's great for English Women's Rugby League, and I get there's Welsh players in there as well. But we need to close the gap with the Gillaroos, which is not going to happen overnight.
No.
It may never happen. But the more people you look at in that Wigan team that can put pressure on places in the England team, and that now know what it takes to win in a big occasion, actually that's quite a significant result for the women's game.
I mean, it's all that happened in terms of money is that Wigan have just done what St Helens and Leeds and York have done to different extents over the last few years, and actually put some money and effort and, more than anything, showing that they care.
Well, I think it's facilities. I think, being professional is being paid to a certain extent, but creating a professional environment for your athletes, giving them the best state-of-the-art gym that they can, the best kind of physio and rehabilitation, a place where they can start creating their own identity. That's professionalism, as much as saying here's 50 quid to cover your diesel to get here. And I think we're going to have got that. But to me, that looked like we've now got 4 very good teams. That's going to create a greater reservoir of talent. That's going to spin into the international game. That can only be good with the World Cup coming up at the end of the year.
And it does say to the other clubs who we know have owners with money that they have no excuse.
None at all.
They have no excuse. And if you're just paying lip service to it, just don't bother.
No.
And I know that sounds harsh of me to say, but it's true.
And full credit to St Helens again for sending the girls off right. For housing them in I think their coach was behind us when we came in. They were in a really nice hotel outside of London. They did everything right. The backup that those players have is everything you could want. They just weren't good enough on the day. And Wigan set a new standard for the women's game.
Grace Banks played with a broken hand.
Apparently so. And would have been cleaning the toilets.
Yeah, and looks ridiculously young in the press conference afterwards.
Yeah, she looked about 12.
But she was the player of the match in the final. She was great, and she's got a great try. And I wonder, are St Helens now in like their men in some kind of weird transitional phase? They
will be at the end of the season.
I don't want to write them off yet because they might go on and
can't.
win the grand final.
No, you can't.
Like, you can't write off York and you can't write off Leeds at the moment because we're in the very early stage of the season. And we'll come to something in the men's final, which is an important point to remember. So remind me of that point. But since three big signings, two of them are in their 30s. They got Faye Gaskin back from retirement. Again, a player coming towards the end of her career because she retired. And I wonder if that... I think they were planning for Kaelin Casey to be a 7, and now she's not a 7, and she's having to squeeze into the pitch at the team. And Saints looked better when they had their 9 on the field.
Yeah.
Katie Motter said they probably needed to play 80 minutes. Player. Yeah.
But, they're going through a transition. And every team does. Wigan are at the beginning of their new era, and Saints are coming towards the end, I think, of theirs. All good for the women's game. It was a game where you just sat back and admired what Wigan were doing, rather than it was a competitive game in the same way that the men's was.
So if Wigan win the League Leaders' Shield, excuse me, and get to the grand final, where they're going to play the grand final? Andy says, Claire Balding was at the forefront of women's rugby league. Should the woman of the match be called the Claire Balding Trophy at Wembley? That should be named after me. I presented the first cup final on the BBC.
I think there are some pioneers of the women's game, some of whom are now in the RFL Hall of Fame, that would probably rank ahead of her. But it's certainly worth discussing.
There's a theory. There's a theory there. But it does need to be named after someone.
It has to be. But not Harry Sunderland.
Not Harry Sunderland.
That's in the book as well.
That is in the book. And Denis Betts gets it, doesn't he? Just in terms of his demeanour and the things he says, and he's talking about how it's one of, I think he said it was the proudest thing that he's done in his career and whatever. And
he has a philosophy, and they've bought into it. And I think him seeing the improvement that they've made is not only a great reflection on him, but is why he's so imbued with the whole project. And if you can get people like Denis involved in the women's game, it can only do the women's game good. People have heard of him. Yeah. And his gravelly voice and his dad dancing.
And there you go. Well done, Wigan. And,
they were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant.
I'll leave my other thoughts until later.
What, one off air?
Yeah.